O te whataro whatu Samoa no whawhonga po e mai le tātou launga fo e lewa ia sā. O te whataro whatu ai le tāpua inga a o sina sino le tunu. Le ngatai Samoa nei e whape e tunu o mau i tunu i whafo. Tāpua inga wha le anga nuu wha le tunu. Pa i rawale i tama ma ainga ma o lātou tama tu mua ma pule. I tu au mala tau ai ngai le taima le wao fōna ti. Whatalo whātu le tapo inga whale malo le whionga le tamaitai pāle mia. Whong whetalai, kapeneta, ia e maise o malu sui sfono uma. O le tātou pāle mene, whono whaitula whono Samoa. Whatalo whātu fōi le tapo inga awaluma, male au manga. O tau o le malo si o le no. E tua iai ia ta māmātu tua tu ua mamatai suafo fio anga manu. Ia i tonu e whata o to mai. Whapena whatalo whatu ia tātou whanau, whanawiti o tau e lima mawai iai fōfuanga i tonu o tātou a inga. Ia tō mātua, ta māma le tina i tonu tātou a inga. Mātou te whatalo whatu ai, lau. Mai moa po lau sila tāpua e mai. Ili tātou launga fo i le nei vai a sā. E isi suinga lai titi o le tātou polo kalame. I le whaanga solonga i peo na masani ai. O leo le atau mawhai mua, o le atau mawhai e tele i ngangana Peritania. Ono leo o iai me tula e mai peo o toi whafango o se manatu ma se langona. Ono le toa tele o le tātou audience le tala noa atu iai le tātou launga. Ia o le diaspora. Ia le tele le diaspora. Ia o tātou whanau na ola ma whanau ma soifua e tunu o peo na tau iai e tunu i whafo. Telefoi lau la tau i le mana malama i le tātou ngangana. O le mea le tā ua i a teau. Tali tonu fo i tau titali aina se tu o lalo. O la whape nana ona whaperetania le tātou polo kalame. Ia tea wā ia sili atu le mānei o lau tala noa, pēo tala noa whapea i le tātou ngangana. A tala noa i ngangana le whaperetania, ia pe ua ese, and I feel like a traitor, for a lack of a better word. I feel it's not right. O leo te tala noa i me wha Samoa, le anganu wha Samoa, le ngangana Samoa, whataua me wha Samoa. Ia e pangare o leo te tautala le ngangana Peritania. Ia e peitai o mea whapenana fitu nai. Ia o se tō whai nei, ma se mawhauwhonga fo i a mātou i nei. E pei sili atu na tā ua mao ngā le tātou ngā luenga whaatino. Mai se lawa le tō tāpua inga. Ia pea iai ni ai o le tātou mea le whai, mō tātou whanau. And so we have decided that we are going to do our broadcast mainly in English. It's going to be a bit of English and Samoan, but mainly in English for the benefit of the sons and daughters of Samoa in the diaspora who were born and raised in either New Zealand, Australia, or America, or wherever on the face of the planet, who have a very limited understanding of the Samoan language. And in saying that, I would like to say talofa, greetings and welcome to Tangaloa Tradition Sunday service. It's a service broadcasted from Samoa on Sundays in celebration of discovering Tangaloa. Who is Tangaloa? Well, Tangaloa is not a god that we worship, nor is Tangaloa a god that we fear. No, Tangaloa is the boundless force, the creator spirit of Samoa that was dethroned by the white god the Palangi brought. And I thank you for joining us every Sunday as we return Spirit Tangaloa to its rightful designated place. Because with Tangaloa seated in the soul of every Samoan, only then can we see Tangaloa in our customary land, in our ocean, our rivers, our lakes. Only then can we experience Tangaloa as the vibration, the frequency, the energy, the power, and the boundless force that Tangaloa is. Like the wind, it's invisible, but we can see how it influenced the trees in the forest to dance. It's a divine presence we cannot touch, but we can feel it. We cannot know nor understand the Tangaloa spirit. We can only experience it. This Sunday, it's the experience of going home, the feeling of going home that we're going to be talking about. Knowing that feeling and understanding that experience of going home, talking about it, brings us closer to discovering Tangaloa. So once again, vea o leo e whaimasui o le tātou ainga o le whaasino manga Tangaloa langi. Mātou te whapea atu ai tā lofa, tā lofa, tā lofa lava. O le ulutala o le tātou launga le nei vaiasa toi foi I le ainga. Coming home or homecoming. That is the theme of our launga for this week. And every Sunday we do our presentation, and our presentation is like we're eavesdropping. It's like we're listening in on a conversation or an exchange between the God of the white man and the Tangaloa spirit of the Whaasino Manga Tangaloa Langi. And it's the conversation between a Pālangi pastor and a Samoa Songaimiki. O lela tala noa le Pālangi lona ia tali tonunga whakirisiano. A lela tala noa le Songaimiki Samoa lona ia tali tonunga whaatangaloa langi. O malata polo kalame le vaias taluai. We finished our program last week, and the Pālangi pastor is going to tell us this week about the story from their book, the Bible, about the prodigal son, the story about the son that went away and then came home, which fits in and slots in perfect with our theme, toi fo'i I le ainga, coming home or homecoming. So let's listen in to the conversation between the Pālangi pastor and the Samoan Songaimiki. Samoan Songaimiki is saying, okay, let's hear your story. And the Pālangi pastor says, okay. Our story is about, it's called The Prodigal Son. And the story is about a father and his two sons. One day, the young son went over and asked his father, Father, I want to go and see the world. I want to go and explore the world. We hear that there is a different thing going on the other side of the world. Now I would like to go and experience that. I would like to go and see that. And I would like to go and mix in that other side of the world. So his father gave him, and the father says, how are you going to pay for all this? Your travels and your hotels and your food, and how are you going to pay for all this? And his son says, well, I love you, Dad, and you're alive, but I'm going to ask for my inheritance. I'm sorry, but please give me my inheritance now so I can do this. It's something that I want, and I need to find out that there is another part out there of the world that I want to see. So his father agreed and gave him his inheritance. And so he went. And when he went out there, he threw these huge parties. And of course, he made a lot of friends because, everybody wanted to be at this guy's party. And as his money petered out and became less and less money he had, so had his friends. His friends started to peter out until he had no money, and then he found out he had no friends. And then Samoan Songaimiki says, can I interrupt with your story? The pastor says, sure. He says, okay, this is a story you said you wrote, it's not a true story. It didn't happen. And the pastor says, yes, these are what we call allegories. Allegories are stories we create and we make ourselves so we can convey a message that we want to convey to our people. It's the same as your whangongo. Say what? It's the same as your whangongo. And Samoan says, no, it's not whangongo. It's whangongo. Say it. Whangongo. And he goes, whangongo. That's it, that's it. So your allegory is the same as our whangongo. He says, yeah. Okay, now you tell your story. See, at the beginning, when that boy asked for his father for his inheritance, inheritance is something the child gets when the father dies, when he passes away. And here you are in your story. This kid is asking, it's more or less he's saying that, Dad, I love you, but I wish you were dead so I could get my inheritance because I want to go and see the other side of the world. And see, in Samoan, that doesn't happen. It'll never happen because the boy has that respect for his parents to even entertain the thought of asking something which is his. But in logistics and in the right placing of things, he only receives when his father dies. So when he asks to be given that while he's still alive, shows no respect. And if we were to write that story, that will never happen. We'll find a way to get the money, but not through asking for the inheritance, because that's a huge conflict with our culture. Our culture is based on respect. Not only respect for your elders, respect for others, but respect for yourself. And when you have self-respect, you don't even entertain the thought of asking. It's just something I thought because, and I think as you tell your story, I will interject and tell you how we would write the story to that part. And the Palangi pastor says, good idea, okay. So now he's going and he's throwing these parties and people are coming because, and the Samoan says, oh yeah, and that's another thing. Do you mind if I interject? He says, no, go ahead. He says, that's another thing. See, when Samoan kids go out into the world, they have that Samoan, that street smart. They don't go out there, they don't win friends by buying friends. They don't buy, no, they win their friends with their personality. They have that little element of pelo in them, which is not lie, it's like stretching the truth a little bit and make it fun. And that's how people sort of glow and like attracted to him. And I see. So you're saying that Samoan kids or young people don't buy their friendship. And no, they don't. We don't buy friendship. Friendship is something that comes from here. So it's what they project from here that wins them their friends. Says, okay. I like this. I like this interjecting while I'm telling you my story. Says, yeah. And I'm sorry, go ahead. And so the Palangi pastor says, okay. Now he goes on and he's lost all his money. And now he's got no friends because he's got no money. And you're right. Yeah, they only came because of the money. So my Mickey says, what did I tell you? And then he ended up, he goes on and he looks for a job. And then he worked for this rich man who gave him a job of looking after his pigs. And now he goes over and he's feeding the pigs. And he's got these old clothes. He never bought any new clothes. He spent it all with his friends. And it's all torn up. And now he's eating. And he found out he's eating the food that he's feeding the pigs. And that's when he started talking to himself. And he said, doesn't my father have a table beautifully set up with all the varieties of food in the world? And here I am eating with the pigs. Doesn't my father have clothes that I can change every day? Doesn't my father have so much money that I can buy anything I wish? And he started talking to himself. And that's when he realized he needs to go home. He needs to go home. And the Samoan song like Mickey says, just one. Go ahead. What is it? It says, in Samoa we have this saying that it's not a saying really, it's like a joke. We say, we don't mind you talking to yourself. It's when you start answering yourself, that's when we're concerned about you. Did your Jewish boy answer himself? Well, not in words, but he caught up and he knew what to do, so yes. And that's when he got up and he went home. And then, as he got closer to home, the story says that his father saw him. He was about 300 meters away from home. And his father stood there with his arms outstretched, waiting for his son. And his son ran to him. And he ran over and he hugged his father. And his father put his arms around his son and blessed him. And it's got Mickey shake his head. And the Palangi pastor says, what's wrong now? What's wrong with my story? He says, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a good story. But what I don't understand is, see, with a Samoan father, he wouldn't just stand there with his arms like this and wait for his son to run to him. The minute the Samoan father sees his son 300, 500 meters away, the Samoan father would run to him. He won't wait there. He would run to his son and welcome his son home. I just thought I'd throw that in. The Palangi pastor says, I like that. I like that. I like the father running to his son. Yeah, that's what we would do. And then the Palangi pastor continued with this. And then he came home. And the father says, he called out the older son. He says, son, kill the fattest pig and let's make a feast. Invite the whole community, the whole village. And then let's celebrate our son's homecoming. Our son coming home. So they had this big feast, this big party, and everybody was there. And the ring was put on his finger. Everybody celebrated. And they put on this new robe, and they put on these new shoes, and everybody was in a jolly mood, and everybody was in a good mood. But the older son came over and whispered to the father. He said, Father, I've been with you longer than my younger brother. You never threw no party for me. You never put no ring in my finger. You never buy me no robe. And now he goes away and he comes back and you put on new shoes. I'm confused. What's going on? Do you want me to do the same thing and go? And his father said to him, son, you will always be with me. And that was it. And he didn't understand. And so, that's the story. And that's our story. And then the Samoan saw Mickey shaking his head. He said, a story. Man, you wrote that story? He says, yeah. Our ancestors wrote that story and put it in our book. What book? In the Bible. Ah, okay. See, now I'm confused, says the smart Mickey. Because here's my son, he's the boy who's done wrong, and he comes back from doing a wrong, and I throw a party for him. And I don't blame the old boy because he's confused, like he said, he's confused. Maybe, and that's why he's asking, maybe I should ask you for my inheritance. Maybe I should go and party and do all the things. And then the Palangi pastor says, yeah, but that's our story. That's how they gave us the story. And the song Mickey says, so what's the theme of your story? What's it about? And the pastor says, our story is about God. It's about the Father that gives his Son anything he asks. And that when he does wrong, he can always come back home. So our story is centered around our God. He's an awesome God. He's a forgiving God. He's a loving God. He's a good father to his children. Is your God like our God? Asked the pastor. And so Mickey shake his head even more. He says, "Oh man, you make me more confused now. What are you confused about?" So Mickey says, "Because our stories are not about Tangaloa, not about God. It's about how the spirit of Tangaloa relates to us. We don't worship him. He doesn't want us to worship him. Our way of worshiping him in his eyes is for us to follow the traditions he gave us to live. And if we live those traditions, that is worshiping him. But we don't go to a place like you do and you bow down and you give money and we don't. Tangaloa wants us to worship his spirit by living his traditions. What are those traditions? Everything founded on respect and love. That's the Samoan summed up, 2 words. Fa'aloalo, malealofa. O le mena ia Tangaloa. Ele mai Tangaloa, o ia ifo mai ia tau. O mai ia maintupe ia tau. Le ai, mai Tangaloa, a e ola ina mena. O lo vivi ina ma lo tāpua i mai nea te. O le vi inga lava na o lo wola o le Tangaloa tradition. O le se sengala na mea tātou. It's all about worshiping God, giving to God, and praising God. Tangaloa says, don't do that. Don't ever think of doing that. If you want to do that, do it through following the template I leave you to live according to. What is the template? For Samoa. Customs, culture, the language, the rituals for Samoa. Mea umana e te whaia mena mai Tangaloa o lau tāpua i mai lana i atea. If you want to worship me, that's how you worship me. Very interesting. Very interesting. We have changed this whole way of delivering our launga through a way so we can connect with you, young Samoans in the diaspora, so you can understand how it was with our ancestors, so you can know how we're struggling right now here in Samoa, living up to that expectation of our ancestors and living up to that expectation of the spirit of Tangaloa is to respect, is to love, and that's it. So that's why we're changing this in English, and we're bringing it to you in English so you can understand who you are, because this is you. You're living in the diaspora. You speak very little Samoan and don't understand Samoan. But you know inside you, you are Samoan. How do I know that? Well, I've been fortunate to spend time living in New Zealand, Australia, and America. And the times that I spent there, I see on the news with our young people that got in trouble. They were in prison. And when they talk on interview on something, they always come out and say, "Hey, I am Samoan and proud of it." He might have done something, maybe doing drugs or something. But here's a kid who is proud of being Samoan. But the sad thing about it is he doesn't know how to be a Samoan. What is being a Samoan is. And that's what this whole program, that's what our Sunday service is about. So you can have some inclination of what being a Samoan is. There's now that we're older, we look back and we see everybody goes through a stage of life where they're confused, especially that transition from being a young boy to a youth, and from that transition from a youth to being a young adult. Every transition there's a touch and go in between there, and especially this transition from being a boy to being a youth. There is a huge transition there that if it's not handled with care and handled with gloves, that transition or that transformation can turn into something quite unpleasant. So when we hear stories about our young people in the diaspora doing drugs, then we know, first thing that comes to mind is those young people need to come home. They need to go home. When we read stories and hear stories about our young people in the diaspora walking the streets with guns, then we know our young people need to find their way to go home. Homecoming. They need to go home. What's even more sadder is when we hear stories about our young people on the streets with gunning down other Samoan young people with guns. That's when we know that this transition and this transformation went bad. It went sour. It went south. It didn't go the way it's supposed to happen. So what do we need to do? We need to go home. You need to go home. Now, there are different homes in this life. The immediate home is with your mother and your father. The home that you were born in. The home that you were raised in. Some of you might say, I didn't have a home. But like I said, there are more homes than you can put your finger on. There is your uncle and there's your aunt. You have family. As long as you have this Samoan blood flowing through you, then you know you have a Samoan connection. You have family. There's your home. But most of all, if you can't find anything else, it's inside you. All the answers are inside you. There is the sleeping giant that's inside you that needs to be awakened. But it can't be awakened because there's so much noise in your head. You know, the noises from your peers, the noises from your trying to get accepted into gangs, trying to be accepted into this, and trying to be tough, and all these noises have to vacate your head. So you have the silence. And when there is silence, that is when the Tangaloa spirit invigorates itself in you, and that wakens the giant within. See, we all have this DNA. We were born with a spirit in us. As I said at the beginning, as long as we have the Tangaloa spirit seated on your soul and in your soul, all the answers are there. But the trouble is we can't hear Tangaloa. We can't hear the voice of the spirit because of these other noises that are going on in our heads. Well, part of coming home is get rid of these noises in our heads. Part of coming home is knowing what it is to be tough, to be fearless. That's part of coming home. And being fearless is walking over to a gang and you turn your back on it. And you say, guys, this is not for me. I don't belong here. That is tough. That is being tough. And that is being a man. Really, in the Samoan sense. So if you're on the street, if you're doing drugs, you need to go home. You need to go home. As long as you have Samoan blood flowing in you, you have a home. there's a place here in Samoan with your name written on it, because the DNA and the blood that's flowing in you is screaming, I am Samoan and I'm proud of it. Coming home. Coming home. It's that transition from being a boy to a man. It's that transformation that usually it's a touch and go. And if that transformation happens and you're with the wrong people, then things may go wrong, might go wrong, and most probably will go wrong. But when that transition happens and you're at home, there's less chance of anything going wrong. Because in that period, in that transition period, there is always the element of confusion. In Samoa right now, there's a whole lot of confusion in Samoa. When we talk about our customary land, there's a whole lot of confusion with our people. What is going on? People are saying this, and the government is saying that, and people overseas are saying this, and the former government is saying that. And there's so much confusion. But deep down inside you and every Samoan, we know the truth. What is the truth? Our land is our heritage. If there's anybody or anything trying to disengage us from our land, that is a no-no. It's that's not in our DNA. In our DNA it says, this is your watch. This is your turn. You've got the baton, run. And if the baton is handed to our generation and we're quiet, we're not saying a thing, then we are just as confused as our young people on the streets in America, New Zealand, Australia. We are just as confused as our diaspora with guns in their hands. Confused. They need to go home. They need to come home. We need to come home. We are home, but we're not home. We need to speak up and speak out, because this is our watch. What happens if the next 2 generations we lose our land, just like what happened in Hawaii? What happens? Your great-grandchildren, my great-grandchildren will come and say, "O whenga ye grandpa e kupungi me. Whenga ye grandma e kupungi me." We are fortunate because we still got our hands on it. We haven't lost it as yet. But we're very close to coming to that. But we still got our hand on it. Now is the time to do something. There's only a couple of people that are on Facebook screaming every day with posts and stuff. What are we doing? Alfa mamanga Samoa. Se kulolo nguku madafi. Pelo mai le politician, sai mai le kala whapea, whike nga ingi kala whapengi, o ngā arua ale whapea. We are just like our children on the streets in America with guns in their hands. You're not any better than our kids doing drugs in the streets of Australia and New Zealand, wherever they are. We are more confused than they are. We can give them credit because they are confused, because they are living in a different environment. Their Samoan is crying from inside them, but they are in a different environment. They can't. It's hard to engage these two things, align these two things to run together at that age and in this section of their life of transforming. Us, we're all grown-ups. You all know what's right and wrong. And yet, for mai kala lea, mai kala lea, for mai isi, for mai ko fa polkiki, I ka ngaka polkiki, ele se me fa penga. Ola vai ko ala ngoko aku le mea, e ka ko fa manga ma kilo ele se kala fa. Fa se kala. We are telling our kids, we are asking our kids to come home. That's what we're saying here today. With the confusion that's going on with the land, there has to be clarity, because this is not our land. Right now we're leasing it from our children. So let's get together and speak up and speak out. whaftai le fionga ia ale. Whawhikai I lo la ngāo maka upulea ma le koe a mai I lunga. Leanga whai ala u Samoanga o le registration ma le upu alienation. O le upu alienation e sau mai le upu alien. Alien means something that is foreign to what you are. O le la ave ese ele I se mea ese mai a kākou mai o kākou lima. That's alienation. So it's in there. Alienation of customary land. O le ave ese ina atu ele whale manu. Lala mele whinga wai. It's in there. And we say we have to go through we don't have to go through no BS. Our ancestors, they are standing in the shade. Olai mama. They're saying to them, this is what we raised. The colonization now, we're doing it to ourselves. Really. We are colonizing ourselves. And you are acting as their agents. You are doing their will and their beck and call. And what are we saying today? Come home. Today, the message is homecoming. Where do you come home to? Alu alta ngata I tonu ya te ia. Ai whalongo tu ele fitau il mele e tūlai mai. Voice your opinion. Whai lau tala. Ai whai male whaaloalo male alofa. And when we talk about this, when we talk about homecoming and coming home, we then understand the depth of the experience. And we tend to understand the feeling of coming home. And the more we talk about the experience and this feeling, the closer we come to discovering Tangaloa. And that is our launga for this morning for Ivayasa. And to all the sons and daughters of Samoa in the diaspora, whether you're in New Zealand, Australia, or America, or wherever you are on the face of the planet, you have a home. Even if you think you don't have a home in where you are now, you have a home in Samoa. As long as you have Samoan blood flowing in you, there is that lineage that traces your name to your home in Samoa. And when you find your home in Samoa, you find that you belong to a certain piece of land, piece of earth that belongs to your family, and that gives you that sense of belonging you don't have where you are right now. But know that inside, if there's no other home you can go to, make this your home. Make Tangaloa tradition your home. We have a group you can come and post on. I have a page that on Facebook. If you want to talk to me, messenger me and we can talk. I can help you. And right now I'm starting a session with some students in Brisbane. And this is a young man who is confused. He's living at home with his mom and dad. And it's that transition, that transformation period he's going through that he doesn't understand. And so we're talking with him, and I'm trying to get him to get some other of his friends so we can continue this thing. So if you have no home to go to, or you would like to talk with us, then we're on Messenger, we're on Facebook. Make this your home. Ia, o le tātou launga nā mo nei vai Samoa, I lau whanua nei, a whapea fwoi Samoa I tunu I mau, tunu I whafo. Po nā fwoi se whati wasala, ia po se upu o le tautamali I lau whafonga. ia ole no ta inga lava fa sino manga tanga loa e fa leo atu mea o le musu ina i matou e nganga o tatou tua a e fa leo atu ina ia fa pena ana taunga mali a fai fo ui ni mea ua tutupu ua whaingata na e fitalai ma e saunoa ia a vero matou leo e fai mo tatou si ufonga e fa leo atua ia i latou fai tonu o nei mea ina ia loa o lea tatou te tapua ia o lea foi tatou te mata matatu ai e soa ia tuai ia vai malo i poenga i finangalo ma ai finangalo ia pe a fai o papa foi se upo le o ona ia ile nei foi vai a sa un fai wele o so matou leo e fa pe ia i manuia o tangaloa ia te oe po fea lava le mea o e ai o e fio mai papa aoi i po Samoa po tunu i fafu fa pena no malutia le to soifua ma so matou ola i tatou savalinga le nei vai a sofou ia fa manuia le atu e tatou whanau mea nai tutupu mai e tunu o mau ia a whaia i eise ava noe mwhaina e fisosoani le mea lea ia a mea o le saenga a whainga mea ia oe po sau leo po sau upu pe isi whala po patonga po se lotu foi po vea ia po lea lava ta oto o tatou e senga o le me tahua tatou a apa e mai tatou whanau ina ia ola fia ma saunga le mo ia tunu o mau to o lalam papa awai ia sa matou whamitalanga lea anga le leitanga loa fuafuanga o le nei vai a sufo ma ia musumusuina pea tatou e nganga o tatou tua a ia manuia soifua ma ia manuia